Good evening. Chancellor Philip Hammond announced in his budget that Scotland will receive an extra £2 billion over the next 4 years. However, the Scottish Government insists that this is cash with strings attached. Well, at Westminster for us this evening is our political correspondent, David Porter.
Jackie, today the Chancellor Philip Hammond has said what he thinks and hopes will lie ahead for the economy. Tonight here at Westminster, people are looking through this in fine detail. It's the so-called Red Book, which continues and has every detail of the budget in it. Philip Hammond says that as a result of his budget, Scotland will get an extra £2 billion and millions of Scots will pay less income tax. His opponents say it's all smoke and mirrors, and it is, as far as Scotland is concerned, it represents a missed opportunity. My colleague Andrew Kerr has been following the day's events here at Westminster.
This budget aimed to secure Britain's future in a post-Brexit world. £3 billion is to be spent on planning for every outcome in a low-growth, low-productivity economy. What a difference a year makes. No majority, no money and still no idea about Brexit. But at least this time round, Philip Hammond has some Scots Tories behind him. Despite the economic gloom in the Commons, the deadpan Chancellor dropped a few jokes here at Labour's expense.
Mr Speaker, if they carry on like that, there'll be plenty of others joining Keisha Dugdale in saying, "I'm Labour, get me out of here."
There's not been much laughter from the SNP though. They knew when they created Police Scotland and a single fire service that they would have to pay VAT. But the party's campaigned to have that overturned. The Chancellor did just that.
My Scottish Conservative colleagues have persuaded me that the Scottish people should not lose out just because of the obstinacy of the SNP government.
The Chancellor also announced a freeze on fuel duty. Alcohol duties frozen too, but cheap white cider's going up. There's a £2 billion spending power increase for Scotland. That's caused a row, with the SNP pointing out half of it is money that needs paid back. There's North Sea oil and gas tax relief to help decommissioning. Not enough, say the opposition. Across the chamber, they weren't impressed.
This is a budget that shows the Chancellor is either blind to what is going on or that he's behaving like a frightened rabbit caught in the headlights. Either way, people are going to pay the price for his lack of leadership.
The Scottish Government say they're facing a cut of £240 million. The Conservatives say Scotland's not being shortchanged.
There's money for the city deals in Perth, in Dundee, the one in the Borders, the new innovative Borderlands deal. There's the £40 million coming back for police VAT. There's lots of direct investment, positive investment in Scotland.
Labour were less optimistic.
Low wages and low jobs growth. We've just not got anything really for working families. We've not got anything for hard-pressed working people, and it's a real disappointment and another missed opportunity.
And a looming Brexit concerns the Liberal Democrats.
Well, by 1:30, I was much more worried than I had been at 12:30 when I heard that £3.7 billion's already been set aside and that the forecasts for the economy are getting worse, £45 million worse than it was in March of this year.
The Chancellor was cheered, job done for the Conservatives at least. But as autumn turns, there's widespread concern about a Brexit economic chill. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Westminster.
Well, of the announcements in today's budget, many will only affect England and Wales. So how do they translate into decisions north of the border? Here's our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser.
Well, as we've been hearing, budget announcements that will have a particular effect on Scotland include that VAT cut for police and fire services, and also the oil and gas sector is welcoming what should bring a significant boost for older oil and gas fields. The Chancellor wants to make it more attractive to buy them and to keep them producing for longer. He's doing that by letting new owners use old tax allowances to reduce the costs of eventual decommissioning. But at least as significant, the impact Philip Hammond's decisions will have on Scotland's public spending, saying there's another £2 billion in there for Scotland. That seems a big number, Well, what's in it? It's spread over 4 years. Slightly more than half has strings attached for projects for which the money will have to be paid back, such as Help to Buy for housing. Around quarter is in other capital spending, for instance, roads and government buildings. Less than a quarter is for everyday public service spending, much of it on public sector pay. Well, that's a cash boost for Holyrood, but the Scottish Government says after inflation it'll feel like a cut of nearly £300 million. The Scottish ministers could use their tax powers to compensate for that. They've already made income tax bills higher for Scots, earning more than £43,000. That gap could well get wider after today's budget. Indeed, Finance Secretary Derek Mackay has new powers to change tax thresholds, create new tax bands, set different rates. He's got only 3 weeks to prepare for his draft budget for Holyrood.
The First Minister set out in the programme for government our priorities, and they're around education, the economy and the environment as well. But of course it is made more difficult by the Chancellor's budget today in that he shortchanged Scotland once again.
Well, other challenges knocked onto Scottish ministers arise from the Chancellor's changes to the tax on buying a home south of the border. Will the extra money for the English NHS flow through to the health service in Scotland or go elsewhere? And here's the big message for the whole UK from today's budget. Economic growth is forecast to come in lower than previously thought, meaning tax revenue falls short of past expectations. Now, we'll get an independent forecast next month, the first of its kind, of how that slowdown could feed through to a shortfall in revenue from Holyrood's new tax powers.
Well, Philip's Hammond budget comes ahead of the Scottish budget next month, as we've just heard. Well, I'm joined by our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, given what we've heard today, what can we expect from Derek Mackay?
We can extrapolate forward to that budget from Mr Mackay in 3 weeks' time, but we extrapolate it against the background of the statements from the Chancellor to the effect that productivity is struggling and that growth as a consequence of that is going to be very low. In other words, relatively low in comparison with previous years. So a tough period ahead. Against that background, Derek Mackay in the next 3 weeks and going beyond that has 3 big challenges. One, he has to decide what to do on spending. Yes, he has that extra money to put into capital projects and to put into projects where there are loans. He doesn't have extra money or huge extra money on day-to-day cash. Therefore, that's a tough call. He has to decide what to do on pay. The Scottish ministers have lifted the cap in principle on public sector pay. Everyone heard that, but there was always a caveat attached, and that caveat was that it had to be affordable. It hasn't got any more affordable as a consequence of today's budget, because there is no generic spending budget line that goes directly on pay. There's talk about support for the nurses, but there's no direct one for overall public sector pay. And then he has that big decision on taxation. Yes, the personal allowance is dictated by Westminster, and that allows the Treasury to say that they're exempting people from tax at the lower end, but all the rates and bands are set by Holyrood. The rates for 20%, 40% and 45%, all the rates and bands are set by Holyrood. The signs from ministers here as they want to increase taxation in order to protect, as they would see it, public spending. That's going to be a very tough decision for 2 reasons. One, it's tough explaining to people they're going to have to pay more. 2, there's going to be a political battle, a huge political battle in Scotland. The left saying tax and spend, and the Conservatives saying match the Chancellor's objectives as set out today. One big fight ahead.
Brian Taylor, thank you very much for that.